1 in 5 children in the U.S. have a learning and attention issue, such as dyslexia or ADHD, but many of them will go undiagnosed. 1 in 16 will be placed on an individualized education program or an IEP at their school. Baldwin talks about how content in school should be inclusive of all perspectives and realities. He stresses that our experiences are unique in shaping who we are as individuals. Baldwin goes on to say that there is a disconnect between the perception of what America is and the reality of what people are living. This is what it's like having a learning disability. 1 in 3 people don't understand the cause of LDs, and 70% link them to intellectual disabilities. Even 1 in 3 teachers believe that students with LDs are just being lazy. Hirsch says comprehension is based on prior knowledge of a subject, but not everyone starts from the same place in the race. If you compare the reading fluency of a child who spent 8 years with a private tutor versus one who grew up in poverty and bounced around 8 different schools, how can we expect them to take the same test and call that fair? This is what it's like having a learning disability. My issue in particular, reading fluency. I have a specific learning disability, or an SLD, with impairment in reading fluency coupled with inattentive presenting ADHD. Fluency in reading is defined by an accurate interpretation of words without errors, automatically decoding words quickly and effortlessly, and forming sentences with the correct expression and intonation via punctuation. When I learned to read in 1st grade, I was immediately put in the lowest group in the class. My lack of improvement prompted an evaluation with the school psychologist who ruled out vision impairment and told my parents that I just wasn't trying hard enough. It didn't help that I got sick every day during reading hour, which landed me in a disciplinary action. No one thought about what I was eating during snack time, or they would have figured out that I had an allergy to the aspartame in the chocolate milk. My teachers just weren't paying attention to me as an individual. They weren't listening to me when I was telling them, reading is too hard and my stomach hurts. Christopher Emdin talks about the need to move from buzzwords and concepts that have become cliché in the industry. Buzzwords like transformational or culturally relevant pedagogy need to become reality pedagogy. Instead of trying to perceive what they need based on what we're taught in school about their culture, we need to listen to what they need and then give them that. By the time I needed glasses in high school, my reading fluency was hopelessly far behind my peers. The optometrist referred me to a vision therapy clinic. They did find out that I had a tracking problem. My eyes didn't read the same way across a page. They said that they were amazed that I had made it this far in school without my grades suffering from it. A year after the therapy, I went from a 2nd grade reading level to a 7th grade reading level. But reading was still a painstakingly tedious process for me. In the 90s, when ADD was on the rise, the testing companies started cracking down on accommodations. Since I had only recently been diagnosed, and I didn't pay the $2,000 for the full psych eval, they refused my request for extra time. A letter from the school psychologist probably would have been enough for them to reconsider, but since he was the one who originally told my parents that I was just being lazy, he refused to help us. He said he wouldn't have missed a reading disability like mine. My 3rd year at U of M was when my disability finally caught up to my academics. My grades started to fail. After my experience in high school, I was not enthusiastic about my chances, but to my surprise, they accepted my diagnosis. They were even apologetic that all they could give me was time and a half and a program that would highlight and read my books to me. I was thrilled. For the first time, somebody recognized that I had trouble with reading, and they were going to try and help me with it. In fact, I would have never graduated without that help. And now here I am, in grad school, working to become a teacher and pay that forward. I was an intersectional student, and the system of education failed me. I was driven away from realizing my full potential, from self-actualizing. My calling was science, but in school, science was too much reading, too many technical procedures, too many directions I could mess up or definitions I would confuse. Learning disabilities are something students hide from out of the fear of being bullied and called an idiot or stupid. Anima goes into how Black students are disproportionately labeled as emotionally or intellectually disabled, and how this created a new intersectionality for discourse between critical race theory and ableism. The statistics from the National Center for Learning Disabilities confirms that Black and Hispanic youth are diagnosed with LDs at a much higher rate than comparison to their white counterparts. Further analysis recognized that populations of English language learners and those living near the poverty line were overrepresented in LD diagnoses. With ELL students, it can be difficult for teachers to distinguish if the child is having trouble with the language itself or with the process involved in linguistic learning. Poverty can add stressors that increase the risk of developing learning impairments, like malnutrition, low birth weight, exposure to lead and toxins, psychological traumas, abuse, or major illness. Being labeled with an LD in school often means that you're pulled out of the regular curriculum and put into something less rigorous. Rates of disciplinary action and secondary dropouts are higher among students with LDs, especially those who face the intersectionality of race and/or socioeconomic standing. My interactions with this class through the content and discussions has given me a new lens with which to view the ways these intersectionalities should be challenged in the hegemonic rhetoric of public education. Of all the pieces we read this term, Anion struck me the most, so I'd like to end with that. Universal design learning and student-centric learning are framed as new, out-of-the-box pedagogies that will engage all of our students, finally bringing them to meet their potential. Only it's not new. Elite schools have been providing this kind of learning experience for decades. So we knew how to help our children. We knew how to empower the poorest communities and bring economic mobility to the working class, but we didn't. Duncan Andrade said that school is our nation's de facto socio-sorting mechanism. We have been complacent with mediocrity and the false hope of meritocracy, when we should have been fighting to break free of our bars. Now, I hold no illusions of grandeur. I am no savior. But I can be there to support my students in ways that I wasn't. I can help them love all the magic that science has to offer. I can care for them as individuals. I can help them find the passion that will shape their future and hold them to the highest standards of academic that they deserve. That is why I need to be a teacher.